Hello, I'm DESTROYITALL and welcome back to another video. Today we are in the end for Minecraft, as you might be able to tell from the Ender Dragon health bar on top of the screen, and also from all of the Endermen you can find around the place. And the reason we are here is because one of my biggest regrets in Minecraft is not waiting till after the end came out to make my Let's Play world. And as a result of this, I do not have an end portal or access to this entire dimension in that world. And it makes me really envious of people who do have access to that, because there's so many cool things you can do with the end that I'm always thinking about. And I figured I'd share 5 of those cool things you can do with your end in today's video, so that if you do have an end, you can be grateful and maybe consider doing one of these 5 things. So please do like it if you do like it, because it helps out the channel a lot and lets know you do like these types of videos. But let's get straight into it, shall we? And let's start with the first thing that you can do with an end that is probably the most basic, but it doesn't mean it's not useful by any means, because basically it's using the end as an obsidian farm. So as well as the fact that, you get a bunch of obsidian just from these big pillars here, these pillars give you several stacks of obsidian each, which is really nice if you're looking for, like a nether farm or something like that. But it's also really cool because you can hollow out the inside them and still end up with a lot of obsidian, but then make a cool little build here. So yeah, it's awesome that you get obsidian from these big towers, but the big part of an obsidian farm then at the end comes from the fact that when you spawn into the end, you spawn in on a 5x5 obsidian plate. So in my case, it's in this kind of awkward little like inside the hill place here. But yeah, once you mine this thing, so I'll just show you right now, if you mine the entire thing up, what actually happens is when you respawn into the end, it actually will always regenerate, which means this is essentially an obsidian farm. And if you just set your spawn using a bed and right next to your portal, every time you go back to the main world, either by killing yourself, which probably isn't too recommendable, or by going through the portal, which you can have done for other ways, then basically, as you'll see, the thing will regenerate, and it's a little obsidian farm. So it's obviously not the most efficient one in the world because it requires going through all of this, but the really cool thing about it is it can be pretty fast, just as fast as normal one, and it's the one that requires the least effort. All you have to do is kill the Ender Dragon, go back through the portal, go back through the real world, and then you got 25 more over and over and over again, and that's on top of the several stacks of obsidian you can get from these pillars. So all in all, this is a pretty easy way to get obsidian, and it's one of the things that I wish I could do. I have to use nether portals, and there's a lot of really trickiness around that, whereas, using an end portal instead gives you 25 per time, and it's a lot easier to do because it's all in a row, and you're generally quite safe, especially if you're in a cave like this. So yeah, that is the first thing you can do with your end that, I always wish I could do. So the second thing that you can do with your end is probably the most useful thing you can do anyway, and that is make an end farm. So this is better than an obsidian farm, because instead of just getting this cool building block, you get 2 awesome things from an Enderman farm. You get, first of all, obviously access to ender pearls, and second of all, you get access to XP. Endermen give you double the normal amount of XP from which hostile mobs give you, and it's 10 XP, which is pretty good, and it can get you to level 30 real fast. So bear in mind, now that XP has gone even, you need less of it to get good enchantments, it means that this is even more effective, because I'll show you the basics of how this works. Basically, the way you make an Enderman farm, it is kind of tricky, because you need to cover your end in non-spawnable blocks. So there's 3 or 4 ways you can do this. The first and easiest way is to cover the place in torches. So the most efficient way is every 6th block diagonally you place a torch, so one there, etc. And you do this across your entire end, which might seem like it's a big thing, but it's easier than the alternatives. So once you do that, which might take you a few hours, basically you've lit up the entire end. Endermen can't spawn anywhere except the dark areas if you have them. So in this case, you then make your dark area this clever thing right here, or one equivalent of this. There's a bunch of different ways you can do it, and then they can only spawn inside here. So all of the Endermen from your entire end, so you can see, see like 20 or so around me right now. That's a very rough estimate. But yeah, all of the Endermen from your entire end will all be spawning around here, which means, let's just say every few seconds you get an Enderman spawn, then you get another Enderman spawn, and because they can only spawn here, they'll obviously be knocked down. And the really handy thing about them being knocked down is the fact that if we go down our operator's hatch down here, and obviously there'd be water if we're in survival, then yeah, basically they drop down to here, and because they take a 42 block fall, I believe it is, it means they're left with just 1 health point left, and you can punch them to death. So no weapon durability needed, but you get 10 XP and a bunch of ender pearls. So ender pearls are so cool because they're an excellent transport method that you can only really seriously consider using if you have an Enderman farm, because killing them naturally to use them 3 or 4 at a time just isn't really realistic. So yeah, if you just make an Enderman farm, here's a really basic version. I'll show you a couple designs on screen right now. Basically, if you want to do this, it's one of the best ways to get XP, and you get an awesome block in the meantime. So yeah, Enderman farm is one of the coolest things. I wish I could have an end, because end farm in the overworld is just not a real thing. You just cannot do it, and that's kind of sad for me. So yeah, that's the second thing. Let's move on to the third thing, which actually involves our Ender Dragon and why he's still alive, because basically it's a cool challenge that also ends up with a really cool result. So the cool challenge is trying to kill the Enderman by destroying as few of these end crystals as possible. It is possible. I think solo it's very, very like insanely next to impossible, but if you have multiple of you going around the end and trying your hardest, then you can probably survive, do the end dragon fight with, like 5 or 6 crystals left, as long as you get your timing just right and you all slash at the same time. So why would you want to take out the end dragon using less crystals? So first of all, like I mentioned, it is kind of a cool challenge. Like you can actually say it's possible if you can keep your attacks up. You do slowly dig away at him, but as soon as he flies away, he loses stuff. But why would you even want to go for all this painful effort? I mean, besides the fun challenge. And this is where it gets into a build, because basically one of the cool things you can do is use these end crystals, which only spawn naturally. There's no way to craft them, and they're very volatile. I'm sure you've all seen what happens when you try to punch one. They just instantly explode. Basically, you can, if you're really careful, use a diamond pickaxe. Just imagine, in creative to make this a little bit easier. But if you just very slowly and very carefully dig the blocks around the end crystal, then what you can actually do is you can end up with one of the coolest things left. So I'm really worried I'll make a mistake. It does require a lot of precision, and just try and dig away from the big, explosive crystal and from the base. And if you do it just right, like I think we're going to do here, and then you mine through the block, because this obsidian block here is also a block, so you gotta kind of mine right through like that. Then boom, you end up, you're left with this just cool end crystal thing, and this can be used for quite a few things. First of all, you can make something like this. This is something I made earlier, and you could maybe make it part of a statue. But 2, it's just really cool to actually see the ender crystal without the, the block there that you always see, because you actually get to focus on this thing, and you could have this in the middle of your house. So, for instance, again over here, we've got one, and you can see this would be a really cool thing just to have in a secret room in the house. Like, you look at it and you're like, oh wow, that is really cool. And yeah, you actually can place blocks in the middle of it if you want to, and they will light on fire, and I just think that's pretty cool personally. So yeah, if you've ever wanted to have end crystals in some form of real build, see if you if you mess up that a little bit, then it explodes. That's something really cool you can do. Again though, you will need to make sure that you save every opportunity to avoid I'm sure you we don't need to explain what you need to avoid, and it is really tricky to master it. Just make sure you're digging away from it, so when you're digging around it, make sure you dig to the right. If you go a little bit too far to the left like that, then you'll blow it up. And also make sure that when you're digging through it, you get it just right. But once you do that, you can make cool stuff. Like, I think this is kind of cool, but you can do whatever you want with them as long as you leave them in their correct places. So I think that's quite cool. End crystals are pretty awesome in my opinion, and that is the third thing I wish I could do with my end. The fourth thing is something that I would do if I had access to one, especially if you have a large world in Xbox One. Obviously, this is something that you will need to go back to after the TU31 bug fix comes out, because there's currently a glitch involving it. And also, if you're on PC, you can go out infinitely. But basically on the console, the world size of the end is actually the same as your Nether, which means that 1, you also get this Nether size map, which is interesting. But 2, if you go really far out, you can basically not see the end. And if you want to, you can make yourself a house like I have here. So this is a very basic, like I made it in like a couple of minutes just to prove a point thing. But look, I've got a house inside the Nether. Isn't that an awesome little thing that you can do? Oh, sorry, the end, sorry. And yeah, it's pretty cool, not only because if you light this thing up, then no Enderman will get here, but 2, it's just the safest, kind of loneliest place you can be. If you don't like, the fact that when you're in the overworld, you have to see the whole world, if you go really far out, because bear in mind, this is just on the 360/PS3 size world, if you go really, really far out to the very corner, even on this size world, you can barely see everything, but on an Xbox One, PS4 large size world, after the bug fix, or on a PC world, you can just go out and out and out, and this is all you'll see. Imagine this is just every direction. I'm just spinning around, and this is all I can see. That's what it would be like to be in the distance, and you might think that's terrifying, but it's also really cool in a lot of its own ways. So again, as long as you torch it up, no Enderman will spawn. Look how many have spawned over here. Jeez, just going to show the point I made about the torches. And yeah, basically, I wish I could just, make a house all the way away from the end, because I feel like that would be a pretty cool thing to do. So, yeah, making a house in the end is something that would be cool. Going really far away from the end, doing something like that. But if you don't want to go far away from the end, if you want to instead embark on an insane project, a Toy Cat style project, if you will, basically this is one that I would totally be willing to do, as insane as it sounds, because what I want to do is I would want to destroy the entire end. So, again, this sounds crazy at first, but I did the calculations on this. So if we assume the end, these are some really rough calculations because it's so rocky, it's not a square, but if you assume it's roughly 200 by 200 blocks, which is it loosely applies to the the thing we're looking at, and you assume it's about 45 blocks deep, which is, again, it looks like roughly where a lot of it stops. A lot of it doesn't, but some of it does. What you could, I worked out that there's about 2 million blocks inside the end of endstone. So obviously once you've destroyed the pillars and you have to leave the bedrock and you have to leave the obsidian, you can actually just mine away every single bit of this, this endstone right here. And even if you mined it by hand with a pickaxe, I did work out, again, using the same sort of calculation I did to see how long it takes to destroy an entire console-sized world. This entire end could be destroyed in about 200 hours, which, again, it sounds so insane, but that's about, a couple of weeks of Minecraft playing non-stop. And once you complete it, imagine the result. You just have an entirely empty world. You have to obviously build a pathway from this to the end thing, but then you can do whatever you want in an entirely empty dimension. Again, it sounds so crazy, but that's that. But bear in mind, that's just the doing it by hand method, because what you can also do if you have a bunch of beds, which are really easy to come by, like, wool and wood, both renewable resources, both very easy to come by, as long as you're careful and as long as you make sure you do it from the biggest distance you can, and even then you're going to take quite a bit of damage, you can actually explode the end away. So here's me doing it in creative just to show you how fast it can be, but look how much we're destroying right there. And bear in mind, this was 200 hours by hand, the slowest way possible. Now imagine we use beds or we use TNT. And you can see, you could destroy this entire dimension and have it for your own use entirely quite easily. So do bear in mind, if you do intend to do this, I would potentially consider waiting until 1.9 officially comes out, because there might be a reset end option or something like that. But yeah, imagine, okay, this entire hole right here, just imagine we're over here, then there's nothing in the end, just a pathway from the thing to the thing. I think that would be the coolest thing ever, and that's obviously just my opinion. Also, this goes right the way to the edge, that's interesting. But yeah, so that's a cool thing that I think that I would really love to do. I'd love to embark upon the insane project of destroying the entire end, and if any of you are inspired by that, I'd love to know if you want to do the same there. So also bear in mind that beds are an explosive in the end. They are not to be used for the traditional purpose of sleeping in the house. Probably something I should have mentioned, the house thing. Just in case you do make a house, don't try and set your spawn point here, because you will have a bad day. Anyway, yeah, I hope you did all enjoy today's video. If you did like it, please do like it and let me know. It helps out the channel and lets us know you do like, the very bizarre kind of building stuff we've been doing recently. It's just something I found quite interesting. And let me know if you can be doing any of these in the comments down below. Or let me know, what you did with the challenge of fighting the End Dragon with a thing. I kind of want to embark on that, but I know it's going to be one of those ridiculous ones that goes nowhere. So yeah, let me know what you think about all these things as well. I guess you know what to do in the comment sections. Otherwise that, I hope you all enjoyed the video, and I'll see you all in the next one. Goodbye.